Hey guys, welcome back to Young Americans Abroad, your best place, again, when things are back to normal, for weekly content on young American soccer players playing overseas. My name is Austin Van Churn.
And my name is Patrick Ferry.
And as always, guys, welcome to our show. So guys, we're back with another special episode today. We're going to take a look at the upcoming U20 cycle for the 2021 U20 World Cup. And Pat, this is a very interesting cycle. It's got a lot of talent in it. And, it's one I think we're really going to really enjoy discussing here today.
Couldn't agree more, Austin, especially in a time where getting kind of sick of watching reruns of different games, whether it's World Cup or just league play. So providing some great content for you guys and just a glimpse into the future, or even the present, you could say. And just to go through the episode a little bit more and how we'll break it down for you guys. The structure will be by position groups. So we have the goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, attackers, and so forth. And they'll each be split into definitive locks, players that we're really set on, as well as solid picks, and players that are on the bubble or fringe, you could say. Nonetheless, all really exciting prospects, Austin.
Yeah, it'll really be cool to see, what players we bring up today at this moment in time, because, the World Cup's not until 2021. So we got a lot of, these players have a lot of time to kind of make up ground and, gain new opportunities. I'm sure with this break period, there's going to be kind of, a weird getting back into the swing of things after it. And, what opportunities that could bring some of these players and getting chances with the first team. So, it should be exciting to take a look at the pool right now. I know at the end of this episode, we're each going to give our starting 11s, and it'll be fun to kind of see who we have collectively in our starting 11 and what different players we have. So definitely stay around for that. And Pat, I think let's get right into our episode.
So starting off, for the first category will be the goalkeepers, Austin. And we have three that really stand out above the rest in terms of the competition and their overall player development, where they're at, and just projecting to that 2021 U20 World Cup timeline. We'll begin with David Ochoa. And so he's an exciting goalie, Austin, 19, with Real Monarchs, and then signed with RSL in 2018. So he's, in my opinion, somebody that is really above head and heels in this goalkeeper field. The way he's able to, his size, his versatility, learning under Raimondo had some really great things to say about him too, as he's developed. And it kind of seems like he's mentoring him to take over the helm as, he's getting up there in age. But again, nonetheless, I think, Austin, I want to hear what your thoughts are on David Ochoa, but I think he's easily, a lock here.
Yeah, and the other thing we got to mention too is he was on this, he was a part of the group in 2019 for the U20 World Cup. So, he's a veteran of the U20 cycle and is someone who really should be, I would say maybe the captain of this team. Like, he should be the leader, leading this group into 2021 and, kind of setting the tone, so to speak, for this camp. And, just like you said, Pat, he's an all-around good goalkeeper. He's good with his feet. He's someone who's fearless and has kind of, some character at the back of the net and likes to, get fired up from time to time and make some, really good reaction saves and things of that nature. So, yeah, definitely, I think he's the first one on our list. I think the next player, we got to talk about, if we're talking about locks for the Gold Cup for the World Cup, U20 World Cup, is Chituro Odunze. So he was a player that, at the U17 World Cup this past fall, got his opportunity in that World Cup and really, really stood out and looked like, obviously he's a very big goalkeeper, but he looked like a goalkeeper that had really come far from where we saw him at the beginning of that U17 cycle. And, he's at Leicester City right now, Pat. That's a good place to be at, learning behind some of the right now. Yeah, there's a few of them in that team too. So, I think he's in a good spot club wise, and I think he's shown enough in his time with the U.S. He's also Canadian, so we got to, I guess, be a little cognizant of that. But he hasn't really shown like he's going to switch at all, during any of these cycles. But I think he's got to be on this roster as well. And then I think we have, obviously one more player, Pat, that we think will be on this roster.
Absolutely.
In 2020-21.
Yeah, and Damian Loss is very exciting, Austin, in my opinion. So just the 18-year-old made that switch from the Chicago Fire all the way up to Fulham. And I think that was back in 2019. Again, a member of I think he was involved in that U17 World Cup qualifying and the CONCACAF championships too. And him and Odunze were kind of there split in game time as well. I think Loss had a little bit of the upper hand, but again, that's just my opinion. And to harp on some of Loss's skills and abilities, he has really fast reactions, really good on his feet, like we mentioned some of the other keepers, and just really an excellent shot stopper, and just a commanding presence in the box, which you really want to have as a goalie in terms of being vocal, leading that back line as well, and just seeing everything on the field as well as protecting your goal, which is the number one priority. So I think just his path to the first team looks really bright. His setup here with the U17s moving onwards. I don't think he's too far behind Ochoa, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the other thing I think Loss brings better than all three of these guys, and Ochoa might be tight with, is just that demeanor, that like fierceness that he brings in net, which we've come to know and love from him. So
he's a boss.
Yeah, he is a boss. So I think it's tough out of those three. I think it'll be good competition compared to the last cycle, Pat, where we had, who is it, Brady Scott, a young David Ochoa at the time, and I can't even think of the other keeper we had on the roster. Was it Matt Freese or someone like that? Marcinkowski.
I do remember, Brady Scott though. Yeah.
So, CJ Dos Santos. CJ Dos Santos was decent. I don't think he got enough of a look, but I think this group has some sheer quality, and I think that's why it's easy to say these three players, single these three players out. So to move to our on the bubble picks, Pat, we only identified two, and those two would be John Pulskamp, who's currently at Sporting Kansas City, was over at Huddersfield Town. We talked about that on our show briefly when he was over there, and then moved back to the Galaxy. Now is in Kansas City. And then Luca Lewis, who's a really interesting prospect over at Torino in Italy, Pat. And I believe he's playing for the U19 team there. He's gotten regular playing time. Like I said, a few times off camera, Pat, Italy's not the place for real, how should I say, youth production.
That's right. We've seen a few cases, Austin, that we've talked about on the show in the past.
Yeah. Josh Perez was someone we were really, really highly excited about, and it didn't really work out. So, can't write him off. Don't want to, come off across that way. But just someone that, looking at the top three that we picked, I think, these are two guys that could be on that bubble there, and will probably get called up in certain camps and, at least get a chance to make this team. Now to move over to our defenders, Pat, it's kind of a mixed bag. We've got some really promising outside backs, at least at the moment, and definitely some question marks at center back. So, Yeah,
you're right, Austin. There's definitely, we solidified those outside backs, and they're developing very well. And again, not to say the center backs aren't either, but there's definitely some players that are with MLS and some Premier League clubs that could make some good jumps in their development.
Yeah, and the one player, at least at the moment, we feel pretty confident about is Julian Araujo. So Julian, for this cycle, we think will be, that predominantly, starting right back, a player at LA Galaxy at the moment. Last year, spent a lot of time in the starting 11, tailed off a little bit at the end of the season, but was really a player who showed strong defensively. He was used in a wingback position at times, and has shown that he can get forward and be somewhat of a difference maker getting forward. But I think, Pat, we really like his defensive ability and just, kind of the grit he shows as an outside back. He's not afraid to take anyone on, no matter who it is. I think when he played Carlos Vela, there was some interviews or a quote somewhere where he was saying how he relished taking on a player of that skill. And, I just like what he brings to the field. I think he's someone that has always, he's always been in opportunities to play up, whether it's playing with U23s, playing with the LA Galaxy as a 17-year-old. And I think he always takes advantage of those opportunities. So he'll be definitely a veteran of this cycle. He'll be 20 years old when we go to the 2021 World Cup. I think, that experience, and he was also on the past World Cup roster as a late call-up in 2019. I think, that makes him a lock for this cycle.
That's right, Austin. I couldn't agree more. I was just going to quickly add, too, like you said, just in terms of being a monster defensively and being able to call enough to play out of the back and be that kind of one of those modern fullbacks, as well as just making those precise, clean passes under pressure. So it's kind of great to see how he's developing there. And then another player, Austin, we want to go to a left back.
Another LA Galaxy.
Another Galaxy product. They're doing something right there, along with FC Dallas and some other clubs. But that is Kobe Hernandez-Foster, the 17-year-old who, surely has made some waves recently, Austin. So, I think, in my opinion, he could very well break in even to the men's team down the road, but just don't want to get too ahead of myself. But, he's a fast, strong, really good dribbler, even an incredible passer, I think, too. I think also he was, he's so good and so solid defensively for the, I think it's the 2019 U17 World Cup. He locked up the spot and did pretty well. And I think he was above and beyond, head over heels, one of the best defenders on that team.
Yeah, and it was weird because he got played out of position,
right.
As a center back, which at this cycle he can't be played as a center back. He's only 5'7", I believe. So, he's got to be in that left back position. And I think that'll help him. That U17 team had a lot of, shaky play in that World Cup. It wasn't the best World Cup, but like you said, Pat, I think his play overall, and especially in that U17 cycle, looking at it as a whole, he definitely stood out as one of the best players on that team. And in addition to his attacking ability and, just his strong defensive capabilities, he also has a really good free kick. And, just his I believe it's his left foot is really, really good. And it's exciting. The last lock we have for this team in 2021 is Owen Adesawe. So Owen, right now he's a tri-national. I believe it's England, America, and Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken, Pat. But he's someone that, was in a U18 camp a few years ago, has kind of, stayed invested in the U.S. and has really shown that, he would be willing to play for us one day. So I think, we got to go after him for this U20 World Cup. And, we got to call him up, in the next camp that we have when we're back, when players are back playing soccer, just because the type of prospect he is at center back is just, he's great. He's got, great size, good technical ability. He's already made his Europa League debut for Wolverhampton. And, this is a team, again, we're going to get to it here in a little bit, but it's a team that really lacks center back depth. So having a player of this caliber being that starter and that, that mainstay at the back, I think will really help this overall group kind of, have more cohesion and more coverage when we take on, some of these better teams in the world and not have a repeat performance of the U17 World Cup.
Couldn't agree more, Austin. I was just going to quickly note, too, just the way his style of play, advancing the ball from the back, and his strength and athleticism. Again, some key traits of the center back, like you mentioned there before, but someone that just, that staple figure along, with the back line there. He could be great, in terms of just, being able to exactly what, Greg and just the U20s and now the cycles kind of all, translating to, kind of building out of the back and not just kind of kicking it long. So I do like that part of his game. Yeah.
And so to move into our next category, we have our solid picks. So to start off this group of players, again, these are players that definitely aren't locks. Those three players we just discussed, we think we feel pretty confident in saying that they'll be on this roster, and, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But these are players that, we think will be definitely in that group going forward. And the first is Travian Souza. So a player we mentioned in our previous episode, I believe we had him ranked at, what was it, Pat, number 20 on our top 20 under 20.
Yeah, he was right there, Austin.
So yeah, he's right back at Hamburg at the moment. Has gotten looks in the winter, in some first team friendlies with them. Just a player who's really come a far way since he's gone to Germany. Was formerly at Sacramento Republic, and just looks to have the qualities you look for in a right back. He's got good technical ability, good size, good speed, and all that good stuff. It just looks like a really solid player. Kind of reminds me of almost Chris Gloucester, but with a little bit of a bigger frame.
I like that comparison. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just someone that is able to rise to the occasion and looks like they have the qualities of a first team player down the road. So I think Travion's one that should be a pick going forward with this team and be in strong consideration. I also think George Campbell, a center back.
You're high on him.
I really like George Campbell. He's at Atlanta United at the moment. Has kind of progressed in their academy system. Played for Atlanta United 2 last year a little bit, and is just someone who has the size, Pat, of someone like Chris Richards, where he's just got this really broad frame and looks like a European center back. And I think that's something with this group that we don't have too many great center backs with this group. So I think the more size we can put back there, might help us out. And I think, more than just size, I think George is in a good spot at Atlanta. I think, he's already made his debut for them this year when one of their center backs went down injured early on. It's been so long, Pat, I'm starting to lose some of the details of these early MLS games that started. But, I think he's someone that once games resume, he'll get his opportunity. Similar to how Frank de Boer used Miles Robinson last year. Miles Robinson coming in to the season was not high on anybody's radar. And, Frank de Boer kind of found something in him and really has brought out the best of his play and the best in him. Right. So I think George can kind of follow in that path. And I think he would be, someone that should be in this group of center backs and, be someone that we really prioritize giving time to over this whole cycle.
Absolutely, Austin. Couldn't agree more. And another player I think was interested, kind of, I wouldn't say the word maybe forgotten is correct, but, left off, I think the U17 World Cup roster is Jonathan Tompkinson, I think over in Norwich City. So the 18-year-old center back is, he's been pretty solid for, in the Premier League too there, excuse me. I think he's played 12 of the 18 games, 4 games in the Premier League too, excuse me. But yeah, he's definitely a very tall center back who's got some serious ability, and his stock has certainly risen enough to be in this specific category. Maybe not quite up to the starting lock level, but definitely somebody I think that we should kind of keep an eye on as he progresses through Norwich, and then hopefully with the U20s here.
Yeah, that's a good shout. A left back that we like as well in this solid group is Jonathan Gomez. So Jonathan, again, an interesting story, and one of those prospects that kind of, not to say it this way, but kind of jump ship on the FC Dallas academy and group to go to Louisville City and sign with the USL club to hopefully move abroad once he turns 18. So, I think the pedigree of FC Dallas is huge here. He's someone that was definitely a player that they didn't want to lose, and has really shown well in the time he got with North Texas SC, their USL club. USL, was it 2 club, I believe. They're in the second tier. USL 1, I guess it would be.
They keep changing in Austin, the structures.
Yeah, which I think it could be for the better. I guess we'll find out. It'd be nice to have North Texas in that championship division. But I think, Jonathan's a player that's got a lot of pace, a lot of technical ability, and is someone that, is wanting to make that move abroad and kind of push his game to the next level. So I think, once he turns 18, we'll see where he goes. And I think he's going to get set up very well for this upcoming 2021 World Cup. And, as someone that, I feel comfortable about with this group going forward. Do you want to, I guess I'll take a stab here on the bubble while I'm going on. So
you're on a roll, Austin. You're on a roll.
Yeah. Moving on to our last category of this group. are on the bubble players. So these are players on the fringe of this core group that we're selecting. The first one would be Mason Judge. Mason Judge is a center back over at Frankfurt. Heard some reports that he's a little rash in his tackles, a little rash in his play. Still kind of raw, I guess is the word that we've heard. So haven't seen too much recently, but I do think it's worth saying that he's a player that's played up for Eintracht Frankfurt and is someone that is playing at a high level over there in Germany. Whether he's performing well in that high level, I guess is left to be determined. And I just think it's worth saying that he's a player that that's playing in Germany, playing again at that high level, and should definitely get a look here. And it's kind of it'll be up to him if he makes this roster in the end. But I think he's someone who should definitely get called up into a camp or two over this upcoming cycle. And then another player too is Joe Scally. So I'm not the biggest Joe Scally fan, I'll be honest, Pat, but I just think, he's got great size. He's a right back, but I think he can play a center back in a pinch. Obviously signed that contract with Borussia Mönchengladbach to go there in 2021. We'll see what happens. It was a $7 million move. So
yeah, it's interesting, huh?
Yeah, I was shocked by it when it happened, but like I said, we'll see what happens. It's good for our players to be getting looks and getting paid that much money. So don't hate that at all. But I think he's someone that, as a right back, I think he's a little inconsistent. I think he's raw. But as a center back, I feel more comfortable with him. I kind of don't trust his decision-making and passing decisions at times. So I feel like as a center back, that might be less of an issue, and it might just be more about him focusing on, playing as a defender and doing his defensive duties first, and not trying to get forward and trying to, play all these great possession passes and getting caught out. So those are my two on the bubble players, Pat. I know you got a few more.
That's right. Yeah, we're going to run through, Nico Carrera, who again is from the famed FC Dallas Academy, Austin. Another of those MLS teams that always seems to produce some great youth. And he an interesting story too. I think he got his the citizenship back late in the 2019 around that U17 World Cup cycle, and right into the starting lineup he went. Right into the roster. Excuse me. He's again a player that is very commanding presence. Just being able to direct orders and things like that. Definitely has some, really other great defensive abilities, likes to push the ball forward, but needs to prove a little bit on the one-on-one defending side, which you'll get with the experience there. And as you go up here and you develop, but again, I think a player that can certainly, long-term maybe make a move and make it in one of Europe's top flights. Another player, Austin, I think, is very interesting, is Leonardo Sepulveda, if I'm saying that right. Excuse me. Over in Spain, he's definitely a defender that I think, in his current situation, I think is pretty solid. We'll kind of see how he progresses. I'm a little hesitant just in terms of maybe some of the other, Spain players that we've talked about in the past, and how their situations have formed. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I just want to quickly mention that too as part of Sepulveda.
Yeah, and we've talked about him on our show before. There's been some rumors, Pat, that even Real Madrid were looking at him, and some of those other Spanish clubs in the first division there. So I think he's definitely a good option to bring up here.
Absolutely, Austin. And again, just wanted to kind of run through a little bit more on the bubbles just quickly. We had Ian Hoffman and Stuart Ritchie, some other players to look out for, and I know you had one more to mention.
Yeah, that's good. That last one I have is John Tolkien. So a left back at the New York Red Bulls, a player who just signed a homegrown deal. Was a player that was left off that U17 World Cup team. But I think he's a player that will just get better in a professional environment. I think he's someone that's in a really good spot at the Red Bulls, and someone I think who will actually get MLS minutes this year. He's just a solid left back, not too quick, not too, big or anything like that. He's just very, very solid. He's someone that can do a job defensively, but also can get forward and provide somewhat, some output in attack, whether that's crossing the ball into the box or just combining and coming inside and covering. So I think he's one to look out for. I think he's someone over the span of a year and a half will be a lot further ahead than we see him at right now. And he's kind of young. He's only, I believe, 17 at the moment. So again, going over a span of a year and a half, a lot can change. So definitely one to keep your eye on.
So now moving on to the midfielder category, we have a lot to talk about. It's loaded with just plenty of talent, Austin.
That's right. We also have a wild card we want to bring up, Pat. So maybe we should just jump right into it right now. Get ready to
agree. And that name is none other than Efrain Alvarez. So, really exciting 17-year-old attacking midfielder with the LA Galaxy. You'll hear the Galaxy come up quite a few times, I think, Austin. But yeah, so he's interesting because of his, the dual citizenship, being a Mexican-American, involved with the U17 Mexico team that made it all the way to the finals and lost to Brazil. But again, he had that, I just want to mention quickly, the stunner, that brilliant free kick in the semifinals to kind of propel them. And he was easily, one of the greatest players, the strongest players on that team. So I think he just is somebody with, a really specific skill set, Austin, that can really influence the game at multiple levels, including that ability to kind of bend the ball and things like that. But I just wanted to get your take on it too a little bit.
Yeah, I think Efrain Alvarez is surely a lock for this roster if we're able to get him. He just does so many good things in and around the box in the final third, whether that's scoring, nice kicks or nice goals, or just setting people up. He's got great touch on the ball. Zlatan pegged him as one of the best up-and-coming prospects in MLS. So I think, we've seen him play for Mexico for the past few years. He was the U15 U.S. captain. So, I think this U20 World Cup coming up might be the time to woo him back to the U.S., Pat. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think, you hit the nail on the head there. Completely agree. Just the way he maintains possession, that style of play, and those other skills that you were alluding to and describing, taking players on. It's just kind of that next gear, someone that would really fit and translate well. Moving forward in terms of with this cycle for the U.S. and the U20s, and then also for club there. So somebody I think we really have to keep an eye on in terms of just all those great skills, the creativity, the acceleration, that extra boost, those through balls. I could go on and on about the skill set, Austin, but one that you certainly have as a lock.
Yeah. The only thing to mention, not to put a damper on this, but is just that lack of athleticism a little bit. We've seen it similar to like Alex Mendez, where at times they leave themselves exposed defensively, which, to be fair, like Efrain Alvarez is more of a 10 than Alex Mendez is, in my opinion. Just again, the things he does in that final third are fantastic. So I definitely think that's like his only knock. But other than that, Pat, he's definitely someone that should be in consideration for this camp if we're given our ideal picks for this team. And to move on, we have Taylor Booth, who's also a lock, one of our locks, I should say, Pat. And Taylor's over in Germany right now, playing for Bayern's U19s. Played well this year. He's at the moment, I think this speaks to what effect he's had over there in that team. He is their free kick taker. He's their corner kick taker. In most of the games I've seen. So I think he's progressing well in the limited footage we're able to see. So I like him for this team. I think he's a true number 6 in my opinion. Not the strongest and not the most physical number 6 out there, Pat, right, but someone that's definitely very technically inclined. Someone that's going to keep possession. Someone that plays that beautiful brand of soccer. And is someone that would work in a possession style system, which I think, we've seen Pat Gregg at the full national team level tried to instill, and what we've heard from Anthony Hudson and some of these interviews that have come out and things, from what we hear, he's going to try to instill in this group. So I think, Taylor Booth would be the other lock. And then who would be kind of our last lock for this team at the moment?
And Austin, I'm very, very excited about this lock here. Jose Gallegos, the 18-year-old for San Antonio FC. Easily one of the most exciting, USL, players here, and
For
someone that could
sure.
rise up quickly, Austin. I think we can both agree on that at least. We'll see further down the lineups and things like that as we go through the episode. But again, I think just being a local player, a product of the academy, I grew up pretty well there, and a lot of the coaches, they harped on some interviews his mentality, and kind of that trait that you see in some of those players that aren't just good, but they really want to be great. Just that maximum effort, whether it's training, just all the little things leading up to the game. You could see that, working well with him, and just in general, his skill set, Austin, the flair that he has kind of brings that. You can almost describe it as like that South American flair. Somebody that's really dangerous, taking people on one-on-one, also not afraid to kind of get sticking and chippy. I think just somebody that would add an extra boost or acceleration into, which I kind of previously mentioned too with the first lock there. But I think someone that would really gel well with that team and being able to be a key instrument moving forward in the offense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Jose Gallegos. For what we've seen, Pat, like you said, he just looks like the Energizer Bunny on the field. Someone who's always running around, always trying to get forward, and really, he's not afraid. He's a very confident player. Maybe that's a byproduct of playing high school soccer and making the jump to professional soccer, but not really knowing any better. But he's just someone that has a bright future. Still kind of raw, so it is what it is. Like we said, he played high school soccer up until this year. So
can you imagine going against him?
I can't even imagine. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I think someone who went once in a professional environment for a longer period of time will definitely round out some of those flaws and get even better and better as the years go on. So yeah, I think now let's move over to some of our solid picks. So not necessarily locks, but some players that we feel confident about.
That's right, and that's starting off with Johnny Cardoso. Really interesting player. Plays over with Internacional. I actually think he made the jump. He was originally born in New Jersey, but grew up most of the time in Brazil there, which is interesting. But at 17 years old, he's a really exciting defensive midfielder who has all the abilities. We've mentioned actually on the show before some of his highlights in rising through the ranks there in terms of that Brazilian team. So I think just someone that you really have to kind of keep an eye on. In terms of getting experience, again, in that league, I think, and growing up in those academies is very important. I think could be a really neat asset for the team going forward.
Yeah, definitely a wild card in a sense. Someone that Greg identified, which is kind of interesting too. And someone that played for the U23s in a camp, I think at the end of last year. So, definitely someone who, we've seen just highlight videos, so we can't really say too much about him. But he looks like a player that really likes to play long passes. Definitely more of a possession style player than a destroyer type midfielder. But I think someone that could definitely fit into this group, and is a player that a lot of people are really excited about at US Soccer. So I think he's definitely a solid pick for this team in 2021.
Yeah. I completely agree. And then moving over to a Colorado man here, Cole Bassett, Austin. People are really excited about him, the Rapid, the fan base, moving up to the first team. But I think some people have predicted the future, and correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of mostly seen as an 8, but could develop into a 6 with the right system, and depends who's obviously playing around him, whether it's for club or country there. But I think he has an interesting technical ability to make it. In the midfielder, lining up, whether it's defensively or attacking. He's been put in the left side or right side of the 4-4-2 formation. So I think someone that's really versatile and, just kind of, climbing up the ranks there in Colorado. Yeah,
Cole Bassett's a good shout. Anthony Hudson's main man from the BSI podcast, if you listen to that. Moving on, we have Moses Nyman. So Moses Nyman is more of a younger player for this age group, but as a player that signed a homegrown deal at DC United, really, really technically gifted player. Honestly, I would probably rank him the second best technical player. I think if you clarify Gio Reyna as a midfielder, I think he would fall behind him. whether or not he's more technical than someone like Efrain Alvarez, I would tend to believe he is, in my opinion.
I think that's a
So
pretty good argument you can make for that.
yeah, yeah, and I think yeah, and I think it's close, but I think he's just there's something about his touch when he gets on the ball, Moses Nyman, where it's very European-esque, if that makes sense. I really hope he goes abroad sooner rather than later. But the one reason why I'm glad he hasn't gone abroad yet is because he's not fully cleared to play for the U.S. yet. I know he played at the Nike friendlies for one of our age groups, whether it was the U16s or the U17s. I think that was just because it was a non-FIFA related tournament, something to that effect. But I still think he's waiting on that clearance. So that's something to keep an eye on for 2021. But everything we've heard is that he's going to become a U.S. citizen if he's not already, and get cleared to play for the U.S. national team. So yeah, he's just very technical, very small player. I think he's only 5'5", 5'6", Pat.
Yeah, around there. Yeah, he is very small.
So he's got to do. It's like playing up at a young age, and technically is playing up at a young age, but he's just someone who's very smart with his movement, with his ball distribution, and with his touches. And yeah, for all those reasons, I just think he would be a great pick for this team. And I hope he can continue to progress at DC United, continue to get chances, hopefully in MLS, if not at Loudoun United in the USL. And then once he turns 18, I think he should look to go abroad right away, because I think he's got the talent to do it and the style of play to do it as well. So Moses Nyman's one. Thomas Roberts is a player that's kind of been around this cycle to start it off. He's more of a cam. Don't have too much on him. He got some playing time for FC Dallas last year, also played for North Texas SC, is really just kind of a all-around center attacking mid, a player who's got not too much speed, but has some quickness, I would say, in tight spaces. There's not really one thing that I can really pinpoint about Thomas Roberts' game that's great. It's more just he's a good all-around midfielder, and someone that I think with given more experience, given more opportunities, can kind of grow more into his game, hone some of those attributes he has, and kind of create a niche somewhere. So I just want to mention him. And then a player that I still really like, I know he's gotten some flack from the U17 World Cup, and I think it's somewhat deservedly so, but still very young, is Danny Leyva. So Danny Leyva was a player that really broke onto the scene in the spring of last year's MLS season. Was a 16-year-old at the time, just turned 17, I believe, this season. So he might have just turned 18. I'm not sure at the moment, but still very young nonetheless, and is a player that, is someone who's more of a six, more of a holding midfielder, not, that strong, tough presence, but someone who's a deep lying midfielder who likes to, keep possession, take pass via the long ball and make some smart decisions that way, and really spread the game. And I think that's something that, we don't see too much on this roster. I think Johnny Cardoso is another one that I have this group of players that kind of does that. But I really like what Danny Leyva does. Athleticism has been some of a question mark for him so far. And I think, some of those concerns have been fair. I do think during that U17 World Cup, Pat, I think he got run down at the end of the season. This is...
Yeah, it happens to young players.
Yeah, it was his first MLS season, his first professional season. I think there was just some wear and tear on his body. I don't think he was as sharp in that World Cup or that tournament as he could have been if he was fresh. And I think, we'll find that out later on here in the cycle. So I definitely think he's someone to keep an eye on with a bright future. And yeah, Pat, I think you have one more player for our solid picks.
That's right, Austin.
Portion.
And we're heading over to Argentina, where Matko Miljevic, I think, is a really exciting kind of more of that advanced playmaker in the midfielder. 18, obviously, and he's very good with his in terms of speed and technical ability, playmaking. All those, very crafty, you could say. And it's kind of funny. Excuse me. I actually saw, I think it was one of the football talent scouts compared him to, might be a little little much, but Coutinho, but you could almost just break that down basic in terms of how he plays and his style. So I think someone that really be clever, crafty with those balls, his technique with the right foot, excuse me, is pretty crucial. So just want to kind of mention him, Austin, pretty briefly here, but somebody I think that deserves to be in this category. Maybe not guaranteed lock yet, but definitely his stock is rising.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Do you want to move on to some of the on the bubble players?
That's right, Austin. Yeah, so right on the bubble here, we're going to start with Tanner Tessman. So again, interesting development for him. I think he was actually scheduled to go to Clemson University. You see some of these trends, Austin, with some players, now switching, with the USL, and I should just say the system in general as a whole being more beneficial, seeing this shift. But nonetheless, FC Dallas has a pretty solid midfielder. I think I think you mentioned it too a little off camera. Already made his debut, and people are pretty excited about him, right?
Yeah, I know. When he started off, we were he played 2 games in MLS, and they're really good games. So yeah, definitely someone to keep your eye on.
Right. And keep an eye out. And then Gianluca Busio, excuse me, just want to mention quick. We all I think we all know him from Sporting Kansas City. Came up through the academy of the first team at a really, really young age. I think somebody again that is able to kind of bring that calmness to the field and distribute the ball pretty well with some short and long balls. I would say he needs to improve a little bit quickly just on the pace of the game. I think he needs to just be a little faster in that manner, but nonetheless, a really exciting young prospect still.
Yeah, he's definitely someone to consider in this cycle. And then you have Brian Kao, another really young player, a 2003 player. So I think he'll only be, 18 or 19 time of the World Cup, but a player with great size, also rumored to be moving to Wolfsburg when he turns 18. So I kind of liken him to Weston McKennie in the sense that he's a player who's going to be moving to Germany. I don't think he's really filled out yet. And I think once he does and kind of fills into his frame, he's going to be a really athletic midfielder who will also have, good touch. We've seen him have good technical ability already. So definitely one to keep your eye on. Someone that's already been in the USMNT camp, Pat. He's gotten his looks already, which is kind of crazy for
before all this went down, right?
Yeah, in January. So, definitely someone who, has the eye of all our coaches. And, another player who's, the opposite of that, someone who I think's flown really under the radar and is someone that could truly help this team in this cycle is Will Vint. So Will Vint is at the Colorado Rapids at the moment, made the switch from Atlanta United over the summer. Signed a homegrown deal with them. Don't know how that works out because he was at Man United for a long period of time. I guess he's formerly from Colorado, but he's someone that should get MLS minutes this season. He's definitely talented enough. Whether or not they give it to him, I guess that's another story. But
right.
I really liked what I saw from him at Atlanta United 2 last year. Was a really calm, composed midfielder. Made some really good passes. Also was played at center back last year at times. So if this team struggles for center backs with technical ability, I think he would be a great fit. Has a broad frame. I believe he's like 6'1", 6'2", maybe 6 foot. So keep an eye on that. But I think he's someone who has a lot of technical ability and is a player that could really help this team if called upon. And then just to run through a few more names real quick, we have Peter Stroud over at West Ham in England, Matteo Rotaccio at Liverpool.
And then,
that's right. And Marcelo Palomino at the Houston Dynamo. So just 3 more names to kind of throw in the ring there and, could make good progression over the next year and a half and kind of get into the cycle and really make a name for themselves. So now moving on to our attackers. And Pat, this is just as an exciting of a group as our midfielders, with some big names. And, right off the bat, I want to get into, 2 of our locks. And the first one is Gio Reyna. So Gio Reyna may not be someone that is ending up getting selected for this age group just because he, reaches his potential earlier, Pat, than this age group collectively and plays
Right.
for the USMNT. So I think it's worth mentioning that. But if he's eligible for this group and willing, if the situation makes sense, I think he's got to be a lock for this team.
Wouldn't hate to have him, Austin.
No, definitely not. I think he's the most technical of any of the players on the roster. I think he's got great size. He's still 17 at the moment, and at the time of the World Cup, I think he'll be 19. So, still super young, and just obviously playing for Borussia Dortmund, played in the Champions League. Hopefully, after this whole coronavirus thing and the Bundesliga hopefully starts up soon, we'll see him score his first Bundesliga goal. And if he's available, I think you got to call him up for this team and could really take this team over the edge and make them true World Cup favorites. I think that might be tough to say, but I know if we get Efrain Alvarez back on this team and another player, here we'll talk about in a few minutes, I think we could look at a team that could challenge for this U20 World Cup this cycle. So moving over to another player that may or may not be a part of this age group because they've moved past it is Uli Yanez. So Uli is playing for the U19s at Wolfsburg right now. Just got called up to train with the first team after the Bundesliga has resumed training. So that's really positive to see, Pat. The more first team involvement we see at Wolfsburg, the more the closer I guess Uli gets to making that first team debut.
Right.
So that's really exciting. Obviously scored his first goal for the full USMNT in January, and is just a really explosive player. A player that's just really ambitious, tries to take people on, has got great technique, good technical ability, great attitude, someone who is really, got cut from the U17 team and has come all the way back to, use that motivation to motivate himself and get better and overcome some of the weaknesses of his game. So
certainly has that fire, Austin. Definitely has that fire. For
sure. Yeah. And what would be cool about Uli, getting selected for this team would be his second cycle with the team. So, I think you could see something similar to maybe a Tim Weah situation with him. That's where he's like on the cusp, coming up in 2021. Hopefully he's starting, or I guess I should say getting minutes for Wolfsburg and contributing. But maybe, there's Gioreno's above him, maybe on the USMNT roster. Maybe Jordan Morris is playing well on the wing. Christian Pulisic, Tim Weah, hopefully he's back healthy. So maybe there's some players ahead of him in the USMNT roster. So we give him this U20 World Cup as a platform to kind of showcase his ability and kind of make with it as he can, kind of like I guess Tim Weah did to make a move to Lille happen after it. So Pat, those are two of my locks. I think they're pretty heavy hitters. Who do you got on your list?
Yeah, those are certainly heavy hitters, Austin. It's always exciting to really talk about them for this episode with the U20 side, as well as just as we continue back to the weekly soccer report when everything goes back to normal. But going on, we have an exciting winger from La Masia with Barça B. There's Conrad de la Fuente. Really exciting player who we've mentioned quite frequently on the show. He's very versatile in terms of risk-taking one-on-one down the different flanks, cutting in and scoring some really clever goals, or providing some assists. Just a special playmaker in general. You saw some of that skill too with the under 20s in that World Cup. I think he was pretty young too, a young member on that team, and someone that helped. I think when they went to the round of 16 and out against Ecuador, but nonetheless, had some really solid performances, Austin. I think there's some games in terms of consistency and being able to really play at a higher level as he moves up the ranks and in age and just develops into the frame. But I think he's nonetheless just a fantastic player that we have to keep watching on.
Yeah, and having the experience for this World Cup would be huge. I think he delivered in that U20 World Cup. I know some people begged to differ and thought
Yeah.
that he wasn't as productive as he could have been. You got to remember he was 17 in that World Cup. This was his first true involvement with the U.S. at an international tournament, and he was a starter for the team coming into the tournament. So I think there was a lot of weight on his shoulders, and just I don't think he had a bad tournament. I just think at times he was a little he got neutralized a little too easily. So 2 years older and wiser and hopefully more athletic. I think he would be definitely a lock if available for this team.
Absolutely. And another really exciting player, Austin, over with Arsenal.
This is the big one.
The Gunners, the big one. And we have Florian Balogun. So he's, really, really exciting. Just pure skill and dominance up front. A force to be reckoned with, you could say. Just kind of to highlight over the last 2 seasons and in some of his productivity, which he can kind of translate. It obviously depends, where he ends. It's a dream. I hope he goes with the U.S., but, we'll kind of see. But he scored about 35 goals in 20 appearances in the last 2 years, whether that's moving up the ranks in the academy with the Arsenal U23s. And he's really a player that a lot of, people are really high on in terms of just his athletic ability, finishing in the back of the net, and just technical skill and speed. He has all those qualities that you find in a real first-team player. And the fact that Arsenal is really high on him is super exciting. I really hope the U.S. can close him, Austin.
Yeah, and he took part in the Vaclav Jezik tournament in 2018 with the U.S. and scored 2 goals in that tournament. So, he's already been in the U.S. Colors for an international tournament. That was a non-FIFA sanctioned tournament, though. So he did compete for England in the U17 Euros. So I believe he's cap tied to them at the moment. If he did change for the U.S., he'd have to file that one-time switch. But, we'll see. I think at the moment, England have a lot of really good dynamic attackers. So I don't know if it would be smart to go the England route for him. So,
That's
just
our 2 cents, right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Hey, something to consider for him. So Florian, if you're watching, hey, we want you.
We want you. You heard it here. And
right.
Austin, I know if you wanted to kind of shift over to the solid picks, I know you have some exciting players you want to discuss.
Yeah. Just to start it off, I think one that if Florian Balogun is not chosen for this team, I think we have a good backup striker, and that would be Ricardo Pepi. So Ricardo Pepi is at FC Dallas at the moment. A really good all-around striker prospect, someone that's got good technical ability, someone that's got great size. I think he's 6'3", 6'4", a little skinny at the moment, but will fill out into his frame. Someone who has a striker's mentality in the sense that he's constantly working, constantly looking to score goals, very hungry to score. And I really like where he's at. I think he'll get good minutes for FC Dallas when the MLS season hopefully resumes. And, I think he's just in a really good spot there to develop. And I think we'd be, in good hands if he's our main striker for this cycle. And to go into another player who I think should be, a solid look at this team, and that would be Cameron Harper. So Cameron is a player who is also on our 20 under 20, most recent episode. And, Cameron's someone that was called up in January to this U20 team, impressed so much that Greg Berhalter brought him up to the full national team for training with the USMNT. So I think that says good things about him. He's progressing at Celtic. As one of their starting wingers in the reserve team there. Again, just quick, pacey, likes to take people on the dribble. Think of, I would say, like Ulianes, but maybe a little less, close control and control in tight spaces, and a little bit more of a, someone who likes to put the ball by players to get around them instead of trying to dance around the ball, so to speak.
Right.
I think in this team, he would be a fantastic player to bring off the bench behind, if Gio Reyna's on the wing, if Ulianes is on the wing, Conrad De La Fuente, I think he would be a fantastic substitute option. And yeah, I think you got what, 2 more players in this solid picks section.
That's right, Austin. 2 more, and we're heading over to Aston Villa with Indiana Vasilev. Exciting 19-year-old forward who had a handful of appearances off the bench. Excuse me, this season, and he's someone again that just an interesting situation where there were some injuries. He was able to kind of get in, like we mentioned in the show before, and improve. Some moments very aggressive when they're pressing and things like that. And I think just someone that is maybe not reason why he's not in the solid locks is more of a not in the locks but a solid pick is someone that may need to develop, whether it's kind of on loan. He's certainly breaking through here, but with people coming back healthy for Aston Villa, and that being a pretty difficult team to break into, maybe a loan would benefit him. I think he still needs to refine some skills, but again, someone with really pure aggression, a great personality that would really mesh well coming from that IMG background with the academy there and the residency moving up. So he definitely knows some of the guys and would fit in pretty well with that team and mesh. But I think someone that we just kind of got to keep an eye and see how he develops moving forward here. And another player, Austin, just want to mention our boy. It's our boy. If you're watching our show and go back and see a few more episodes, that is Charlie Kelman over at the Southend United. So Charlie has had quite the rise, I guess you could say, Austin. I'm hoping maybe not the best comparison in terms of positions, but Dwayne Holmes kind of rising through those lower leagues in England. Eyeing that spot with the U20s now. So I think ever since he had that wonder goal, way back when with Southend, he's really taken the storm from the academy and solidified himself, as a real lock in that team. And I think someone that just is learning the game, still raw. I think we could agree with that, but great finisher. Again, you saw some of the goals and shots he's had, some of the highlights we've covered, but I think someone that, it would really, he's a young guy, and it would be interesting to see him maybe come off the bench with the U20s and spark some energy there. Maybe it's a last minute goal they need.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective too. I could definitely see him coming off the bench and providing, a spark up front. I think, he's just going to get better the more opportunities he's had, or he's going to get, I should say. He's in a not so great situation at the moment at Southend. That's a team that's playing a lot of young players. So it's good for him, I guess. Right. But it's just a team that's going to get relegated this year from League One. They're a team that, just have struggled this year. So, all rumors suggest that he's probably going to move on from that team. So I'm excited to see where he goes. And, I think he would be a great pick for this team. And, moving on to some of our on the bubble players, not going to go into great detail here, but some players that definitely deserve a look would be Quincy Butler, who's at Hoffenheim right now in Germany. He's had a good year so far. And then Johan Gomez at Porto. He's another, player to keep your eye on. And then Pat, I feel like you have one more here.
Yeah, that's right. Matthew Hope. We talked about him with Schalke. Just want to say, he's had some great games where he scored multiple goals, and he just needs to get a little more consistent as he goes. That'll come with age and more experience going up, but just someone to kind of keep an eye on, Austin.
Yeah, for sure. And then we also have Jalen Hawkins on this list, German American over at Ingolstadt, I believe at the moment. Spent some time at Bayern Munich. Pacey. Someone who's been involved in several U.S. camps in the past, but, someone who's definitely on the fringe at the moment. And then one final player I wanted to bring up who's very young for this group, but I think could really make a good impact over the next year and a half and kind of climb up the chart a little bit. And that would be Dante Sealy. So Dante is currently at FC Dallas, played a good amount last year for North Texas SC. I don't think he made his debut for FC Dallas last year, but I definitely think he will this year. I think he's, kind of the next big prospect in their pool, maybe behind Ricardo Pepi and, maybe Paxton Pomacall, right behind those players. I think he's got that type of ceiling. Dante Sealy is he's more of a winger, I would say, at the moment. he had some trials at PSV over the summer, and it's just a player that's got good speed, good technical ability, and is the type of player with a disposition that you're looking for. He looks like he's got that mentality to continue to improve his game and just not be settled with being I guess to say it like good in MLS. Like he wants to go abroad. That's his whole mindset, his whole philosophy. He's doing these tours and these trials to get more exposure overseas. So I definitely think he's someone that we should have an eye on, Pat, and could very well make noise with this cycle.
All right, all you viewers in Austin, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to go over our starting 11 for that 2021 U20 World Cup. So there's a lot to get into, and we're going to start with the goalkeepers, Austin. And this is one that I think is the guaranteed lock, which we mentioned. That's David Ochoa. Right away, I think he's my starter there. Commanding the back, can kind of direct and boss around the back line, organize. Someone that's really rising up, like we mentioned before, in terms of Real Salt Lake there, backing up Armando. He can certainly help that team going forward. And now, going to the back four, Austin. I think it's an interesting back four with the outside backs I want to start with. That's Julian Araujo on the right with the Galaxy, and then on the left, another Galaxy guy, Kobe Hernandez-Foster. So you can see kind of the connection there, obviously with the U.S. teams as well as their clubs. So just that kind of connection. And again, people that we're looking for, or players we're looking for that have that dynamism and balance and not afraid, going forward, as well as, defensively, people that would really fit into the system that we're looking to do here. And right in the middle, we got, exciting Owen Odasawe with Wolves. I think just that commanding presence again, someone right behind or in front of, you got Ochoa and him right in the middle, directing everything. Along with, I think, is an interesting surprise, and I want to kind of hear your thoughts too. I was going back and forth, Austin, with Nico Correa, but I ended up going with Jonathan Tompkinson right in there, the 18-year-old from Norwich City. I think just an interesting pick. I wanted to throw things in and mix something up a little bit. He was left off that U17 World Cup roster, but can clearly see his stock has risen very much to be considered, for the U20s going forward. And again, just some of those strengths that I think he'd mesh well and complement well in terms of his height and technical ability, and being able to maybe sit off or move forward in terms of working with Owen, who's very dominant, I would say, in terms of the personality. So I think Jonathan is a player that lets more the ball do the talking, but nonetheless would be a good pairing.
Okay, who you got in midfield?
Right, and my midfield, and I want to express I put the best four midfielders I could find, from this. So whether it's the left, the right, figure out it's kind of that diamond, because there's that 4-4-2. So again, right there is Taylor Booth kind of sitting back a little bit in the central part, but more defensively. I think just his experience, the U17s, the U.S. rising up, could be a great fit there. Along with, you hear my interesting picks, Austin. I have Efrain Alvarez, again, player we discussed, is that guaranteed lock. Just provide that spark and energy we need in the midfield to get things going, as well as Jose Gallegos, which I'm really, really high on. And I think you guys should be too, because, he's coming for those spots one day, rising up for the U.S. teams here, and hopefully to the national team. I think someone that really meshed well and just a great presence in the pitch, and can find the ball and distribute really well, and combined with that tacking, that flair. I think a lot of my midfield, Austin, has that flair, that technical ability to combine and kind of provide that, almost you would say, that Barca-esque tiki-taka way to it, with a little bit of, if they lose the ball, be able to, go get it back quick. And then I also have, last but not least, Matko Mildovic. So he's kind of the attack part of the center mid, with Argentino Juniors, which you mentioned before. And he was, I think, recently in January with the U20s for some recent games. And obviously with the Argentina side, the U18s before, as a number 10, which is interesting. He's got all the skill sets and tangibles, I think, to be in that four quad group of midfielders, which I mentioned there.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Who do you got up front?
That's right. So up front, since I did the 4-4-2, Let me just state here, I'm not going back in my opinion, but I wish I could have added a 3. You can't do that, but maybe shifting the lineup. But the 2 I have, the most talented players, I think most of us could agree on would be Gio Reyna and Ulianes. Right now, where they're at in the development, I think it's interesting that I would put the extra one if I had that 3 of Balogun there, just in that center of the pitch, that pure striker there. But it'll be kind of interesting, I think, to have those dominant rising Bundesliga youngsters, kind of flanking and making those intertwined runs and connecting with Milovic and Gallegos and some of those other Efrain Alvarez. I think that could be an interesting mix. Maybe not the most traditional lineup, but just wanted to create a little flair there.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting little flair there at the end. Gio's someone who we've toyed with playing at the striker position, and Uli's played in that cam or false 9 role at times with the Wolfsburg's U19s, from what I've seen. So yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, a little different out there, but I like it.
That's right, Austin. Yeah, a little bit different. Again, let me know your thoughts too at this episode, and Austin, thank you for commenting on that. And I just want to hear, your lineup and what your thoughts are. I know maybe you have a different formation. I don't want to give too much, but yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I mean, we have some of the same players. So I guess starting from the back, I also had David Ochoa, a veteran from the last U20 cycle. So I think his presence definitely needs to be in this starting 11. And then, like you, I had Kobe, Hernandez-Foster, and Julian Araujo, 2 really talented outside backs and ones that should have a bright future going forward. And where it changed a little bit was center back. So I had Owen Adesawe. Owen, like we said, surely a lock for this team if he chooses us, and should be, that main center back throughout this whole cycle.
We agree there.
Yeah, I think he's a safe bet. And then the one player that was different, I had George Campbell. So I'm really high on George Campbell. I know he's a little bit raw. I know he's maybe not as technical of a center back as you'd hope for in a system that Anthony Hudson is going to try to play, similar to that of Greg Berhalter, where players try to play out of the back. But I think when you don't have that technical ability in the pool, I think you look towards someone who has the size, and I think George Campbell definitely has the size, and I think he'll just get better the more he plays. So I'm gonna throw him back there with Owen Adesawe. Owen can be the distributor. George can be kind of the brute, so to speak. Who would be a good example? Cameron Carter-Vickers, baby.
Right. I could kind of see that.
Pepe.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. The center backs is an interesting spot, Austin, where maybe we don't have as much depth as before with the past cycles, but nonetheless, some great talent there.
Yeah. So moving to the midfield, a little nervous about my midfield. Kind of like you, Pat. I tried to pick the best players I could to put in this midfield. A little concerned about their defensive prowess, but I put Johnny. Yeah. So I put Johnny Cardoso at the 6. So at the moment, from what we've seen, again, it's just highlights. So, we can't put too much stock in it, but we've seen him play as a number 6 as well as a number 8, likes to distribute from deep. So I think, him at the number 6, I'm hoping he can provide some cover as well for my 2 other midfielders who like to primarily attack. So I put him there. Again, those 2 other midfielders, the first one is Efrain Alvarez. So I guess Efrain would be more of the player who stays in that number 10 position, in my opinion. I know Gio's played, mostly in that position. He hasn't played much in the 8, but I think I'm going to put Gio in the 8 as well next to him. So again, 2 really talented offensive players. My hope is that Gio can use that frame he has to kind of boss the midfield and do some defensive work and track back and win some balls while also getting forward and maybe taking a shot similar to that one against Bremen in the DFB Pokal.
That's interesting, though. I guess, like, in terms of just using Gio Reyna's physical abilities and being able to track back and things, I think that's an interesting spot. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, he possesses all the qualities that a number 8 midfielder has. Soft feet, really good on the dribble, and is someone that has even shown, in the first team that they can get back and defend. Obviously, he's more of an attacking player. So, like I said, this is a very attacking-minded lineup, so I know I might have a little defensive coverage to figure out. But yeah, Efrain Alvarez had to include him in this lineup. He's just so good in and around that box. I just think he would be a difference maker in this roster and in this lineup if we can get him to switch back. So had to give him some love there, and hopefully we see that come to fruition. So my three attackers up front would be Ulianes, Valerian Balogun, and then Conrad De La Fuente on the right. So I think that's a really exciting front three. Ulianes should be really dynamic on one wing, and then Conrad De La Fuente would be really dynamic on the other wing. And then you have a proven goal scorer and someone who is a really exciting prospect in Valerian Balogun up front. So, this, like I said, Pat, is a very offensive heavy team. I'm not sure. We might have to win games 7-5, but
hey, we like some player in offense. But
yeah,
I think that's really what I love about your lineup too, is especially that ability to include Reina, but also have those dynamic three up there with Balogun. Just we talked about electric, just a player that's a force up there in the front. Flanking him would be Yanez and De La Fuente, like you said, and I just think that would be a great combination. You could see some interchanging with the outside backs and Reina, things like that. I think could be a really dangerous and potent combination moving forward. And just makes me really excited. I know we had some interesting differences and stuff with the formations, but nonetheless, you could see all the talent that this age group provides.
Yeah, looking at these lineups on paper, it's really exciting. We still have a year and a half out, so a lot can change, obviously, Pat. But yeah, this gives us a good perspective. So for all you viewers, definitely leave a comment. Let us know, what you agree with, what you don't agree with, what lineup you would want to see at the 2021 U20 World Cup. We're really obviously interested to hear, and yeah, it's fun doing these types of episodes, Pat. We get to take a look into the future and
exactly.
see what we got.
Take a look in the future and all those glimpses and exciting moments. And just want to mention some exciting stuff going on in terms of social media. We have, Twitter, Instagram. We're always, again, just, posting about these specific players. And during this crazy time, we want to provide you guys, great content on some of those players that you really want to learn, about, get some more insight as they pick back up into the seasons. Hopefully, I know in Europe, there's some areas where it's getting a little better, and maybe training's going to resume soon. So we'll kind of be able to see that pace through, and hopefully the rest of the world stays safe, because I think 2021 in terms of the U.S. youth setup is an exciting time, Austin. I think it could only really lead to one thing.
That's right. And before we get to that, I just want to jump in, Pat. Make sure you like this video. First, do that. Also, subscribe to our channel. And then I think the one other thing, Pat, we want to reach out to you guys about is just putting some other video ideas in the comments. Let us know what type of topics you want to hear about with this whole pandemic thing going on. There's going to be some more free time to be had. So leave your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what you want to hear about.
Yeah.
So
all good points, Austin, I think, that you bring up. And I love it. We had to throw that in reverse order. It's a different time, so we got to change it up a little bit. But, nonetheless, we have some exciting movements going on once things pick back up. And, all these players, I hope you guys are really excited about, because I'd love to kind of get in some discussions with you, like Austin said, in the comments. And decide, maybe who's in your lineup, or who maybe that you would include if you have any, interesting facts about some players we didn't mention.
That's right. Yeah, I couldn't say it any better. So with that being said, now it's time to look ahead to the future. And, Pat, I think it's, going out on a limb, but hey, we're going to keep saying it, and hopefully we'll speak it to fruition. That would be one day we will win the World Cup.